All right, hello. Welcome to Project Stream number, I forget, 12. Project Stream 12. And today we're going to do a journal with me and Q&A. I actually did this last weekend, this exact stream, basically. But of the 2 hours that I did, only 4 of them were recorded. So that did not get posted. So I'm going to re-answer those questions so people will finally get their answers. And I have more questions this time. So it's going to be even better than it would have been, is what I'm saying. And I'm going to be setting up my spread for the next week. And the next week is a little different from most of my weeks. So it's actually going to be kind of interesting to see how I do an irregular week. But you've seen how I do a regular week at this point, if you watched the first journal with me videos, because those got split in half. I think I figured out mobile Twitch now, but I'm still working on it, and hopefully we don't have any further issues. I'm actually going to have to step away for one moment, but I will be right back, and we will get started with the journaling. All right, so welcome to the stream, anyone who's just joining right now. So we're going to start with my setup idea for this week. I'm just, sorry, one second. I'm trying to open up my channel on my laptop so I can keep an eye on questions or other sort of things coming up in the chat potentially while we are doing this. Okay, so because I want to be able to see any questions or comments made in the chat. Feel free to ask more questions. I might not get to all of them because I have a lot of questions to answer already, but feel free to make any comments as well as you go on. Just, of course, be polite, be nice to people, but I'm open to seeing and responding to comments as well as we go. That's why I have my computer open here. So, most of my weeks, if you saw the last journal with me, you'll know I kind of do a sort of weekly, daily hybrid thing where I put my schedule on as like my weekly schedule out on like a sidebar, and it's mostly my work schedule and then other little events that I have symbols for that tell me what the events are. And then in the inside, I make like a little Dutch door type thing. And in the inside, these are like my dailies. And I don't always have a lot to put on the dailies. When I'm being more diligent about like journaling my mental health or just writing my thoughts, taking notes on things, and you'll see there's more sometimes. But I don't always do that, and so sometimes it's a little blank, and I kind of fill that in with doodles or little stickers and that kind of thing, and it's a lot of fun. So that's sort of my general setup, and I'm going to do that again too. I do the Dutch door thing, A, so that I can have my weekly schedule visible for the whole week, and B, so that it kind of keeps the week as a unit kept together, but I still have enough space so that I don't have to divide just 2 pages between 7 days. It's doable. I've done it before, but I find I like to have the extra space to add all these little doodles and stuff. As you can see, this week I did a lot of doodling on these first few days. I still have to finish writing up stuff for today. So, I actually need to cross this off and this off. Good. Okay. So, for the new week, you can also see I usually do like interlace as my border. I'm going to do something different this time, and it's sort of closer, more reminiscent to what I did here, where it's like a little border design of a different kind. That's my idea. It's a little bit less sort of, I guess, intricate. I mean, it'll still look intricate, but it's less sort of like needing to make a bunch of dots and plan that out. I'll still have interlace, probably, throughout my pages, just not the border, I think. So I'm going to start by figuring how much space I need on the edges so that I can see on both days so that I know how much to cut. So this is the part of the process that I skipped. Last time I did a journal with me, I didn't show this part. I did this ahead of time. This time I'm not doing that, so you can see kind of how I do this. So my weekly sidebar takes a width of 2, typically. And there are 36 sort of squares, top to bottom. And I think it's 20 across. I don't worry too much about the across. I just care about how much in from the edge, how many squares in I need to cut into. Top, bottom, I do like to know so that I know how to divide it up in terms of days on the sidebars. But they don't have to be perfectly even because not every day has the same amount of things that I have to put there. But I know I need a width of 2 at least for the weekly sidebar, and then I'm going to have it, I think I'm going to do width of 2 for my border this time. Last time I just did 1. And I keep an extra space on the outside just because it's not always even on both sides, the dots. I might do that again. So I'm going to come in 2 with the border all the way around. And then the sidebar is 2 more. So I'm going to have to cut here. So that's in like, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, and it lines up here on this page, thankfully. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Because it's 2, and then the sidebar. Right now, 1 and then 2, and then the sidebar. Sidebar goes here, border's here. So I'm going to come down 2, not counting this like upper edge because you can see that's not always even either. And then I'm going to come in 5. So I'm going to cut here basically. This is going to be, and I'm going to go up 1, 2. So this is what I'm cutting out, is this area. All this is coming off. And I recycle this. I use this to cover up mistakes and stuff when I don't feel like using whiteout. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, and as I'm doing that, I'm going to answer my first question that I got. My first question, I have a total of, I think, let's see, I have 16 questions. So I'm going to try to make these answers not take too much time because today's stream is not going to be the full 2 hours. It's just an hour and a half today. I have to leave a little bit earlier, so that's what I'm doing today. So the first question number 1 is, how did you get started in studying languages / where did you learn? It's kind of a combo of 2 questions. And I think I can answer both in the same question anyway, so that's a good thing to combine, I guess. I got started with learning languages when my ears developed and I was able to hear when I was in the womb. I started learning the English vowel system so that when I was born, I was crying using English vowels. Pretty much all hearing babies start learning the vowels of their mother's language when they're in the womb, once their ears develop. But that's not actually answering the question. That's just me being silly. So the actual answer to the question is, I grew up exposed to a few languages. I grew up speaking English because that's what my parents spoke, and I was also grew up hearing a lot of Italian from my grandmother, and just in general, we consumed and listened to a lot of Italian media, watched a lot of Italian media. So Italian was also very early exposure in my life, and I started learning it, like speaking it, responding to it, at a young age. But I kind of became more intentional with it when I was about 7 years old, like actively learning it, because my grandmother was worried that no one in the family was going to end up speaking it. So, and she noticed that I was interested in it. I was interested in languages in general, so she really encouraged me to do that. My parents were very encouraging of it as well, because while a lot of my family on her side understood Italian, like my dad understands Italian very well and can respond to it and in it pretty well as well, she's worried no one would be fluent in it, because and it was mostly only my dad who showed any interest in it to begin with in that generation. So yeah, Italian was very important to me. But I was also, at the age of 7, super interested in paleontology, and I loved dinosaurs, and specifically, like, I was really into the taxonomy of it all, and the naming conventions, which are all in Greek and Latin. So I started really early on going to the library, finding books on Greek and Latin grammar, and learning and studying Greek and Latin very young. And I was very into it. And 7 was also the age I was when I first was exposed to the works of J.R.R. Tolkien. And actually, I might have been younger. I think I might have been 6, or I like turned 7 or something like that. My years might be a little off, but it was a long time ago. I was exposed to the works of Tolkien very young, in any case, and those are very concerned with language and different languages, and conlangs, especially the Elvish languages in particular. And those were super interesting to me, too. It wasn't until I was about, 11 or 12 when I actually started being interested in learning them, because I was busy with other things at that point. I was learning ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. I was very passionate about those. So that took a back burner until later. But yeah, so how I learned most of those languages was mostly grammar translation. That and exposure. In addition to Italian and English and some Portuguese and Hawaiian, I also spent a lot of my childhood in California, and so there was a lot of exposure to Spanish as well. And I got to study that in middle school and later in high school. I also studied French in high school. So in terms of just going to school learning languages, that was my sort of way of learning those, was studying, learning. I was lucky enough to get to go to France in high school and live with the host family for a little bit. And so yeah, I did study some languages in school, but most of the languages I learned to be able to read and write and speak a little bit of were not languages that I learned in school. They were old-fashioned grammar translation, reading grammar books, reading, learning vocabulary, reading articles. In the case of the old languages, I was reading reading old texts in the original language and trying to understand them, reading lots and lots of footnotes to get the nuances of different words. So yeah, I basically, the hard way is how I learned most of the languages that I now work with. And then in undergrad and at grad school, of course, I took lots of classes in different languages, and also linguistics, where I learned how to, understand what was going on in a language, how it worked, which definitely does help you learn, because you can kind of understand what the challenges are and how to approach them a lot better once you actually understand how languages tend to work, and how they deviate from each other as well. So it was a combination of a lot of self-study and schooling and exposure. So yeah, that's the first question. Now that I have my border and I've cut out the Dutch door, I'm going to go ahead and work on doing the border. And I'm going to use 2 colors. I'm going to use, I guess 3 colors technically. I'm going to use this blue pen. I usually don't say the brands of the pens, but it's a big crystal. You get these in really big packs of pens. Pretty cheap. It's just like a little ballpoint pen. But it works, and it doesn't bleed as bad as some of my other blue pens, so I'm using it. And I'm going to use this. No, not this one. This is my favorite gold gel pen. It's a Jelly Roll Metallic Sakura Jelly Roll. I can't remember where I got this. I think some kind of art store or something, but I like this. But I'm going to put this against black. I think I'm going to start... This shows up better when it's against something, so I'm actually going to do the border in black and blue, but then I'm going to do gold over the black. I think that's my plan. So, also, I need to do the gold after I erase the pencil, because erasers erase the glitter off of the gold so that it becomes not gold, and it's just kind of like a weird sort of pink, coppery color, which isn't bad, but it's not sort of like the shiny gold color that I want. So I have to erase and then put this on top and let it dry. All right, so the next question I got is, what languages are you interested now / are learning now, and why? So I have not been very diligent with the language learning that I've been trying to commit to in the last couple years. There are, I want to say, 4 languages I'm trying to like actively learn, and I've been doing very little of it because of all the other, linguistics stuff and projects and all this kind of stuff that I'm working on as well. The actual language learning has had to take a back seat a bit, unfortunately. But the 4 languages that I've been most actively trying to learn, in theory, are, I'll do each one at a time. Irish is one that I've been sort of passively learning since high school, but not actively learning, not like really doing a lot with it. I mean, I actually am using it quite a bit, my Irish knowledge, and gaining more Irish knowledge because of the journal conlang that I've been working on. It's been I'm using the wrong color. Okay, sorry. Whoops. I need to check something. Yes, okay. Just because I was exposed to a lot of Irish like media young, like a lot of music especially. I've always been interested in Irish culture, Irish language, Irish music, and Irish history, Irish mythology. All that stuff is really fascinating to me, and important to me as well. And so I have been wanting to learn to get to a higher level than just being able to say hello, how are you in Irish for a long time. I can, if I have a dictionary with me, I can work out sometimes what older texts are saying, like Old Irish, but it's pretty tricky. Like Old Irish poetry is really fun, but really, really hard to read. So that's something that I've been like working on. It's been an interest for a really long time. Another one is ASL, American Sign Language. I've been wanting to learn that also. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to learn it, but it was never really an option for me. There was a point in time when it was offered in my high school, like I think it was my senior year, they started offering it, but the one period when they offered it clashed with a class I was required to take, so I didn't actually get to take ASL in high school, even though I wanted to. And I don't think if they offered any courses for it in I know they didn't offer it in my grad school, but in my undergrad, I don't remember them offering it. If they did, I just never encountered it. But I've always wanted to learn it, and I did take an online course last year in like beginner ASL, which was really cool. I had studied a bit like from a meta-linguistic point of view on ASL, like some features that it had I learned about from a linguistic perspective, but I didn't actually like learn the skill of speaking it or using it at all. Signing. My receptive skills are pretty bad, and my actually doing it skills are, I can't decide if those are worse or better, but I did take the course and it helped a lot, but then I did not commit to practicing it once I finished the class, and I couldn't continue on to the next class. But I do want to dive back into ASL because I really, really want to learn it, and it would be really cool to actually have that skill and ability to do and communicate with people. So yeah, that's another one that I'm interested in learning. Oh yeah, there's 2 more languages I wanted to talk about. One is Arabic. I've been, again, kind of passively, not actively learning Arabic for many years now, like since I was an undergrad, and I never took any classes in it. No classes were ever offered to me anyway, but I did have friends who spoke it, different dialects of Arabic, and other people close to me who spoke Arabic, but and my grandmother spoke Arabic too, but she never taught me any. But I've always wanted to learn it. I've read a lot of texts that were originally written in Arabic. I find a lot of them, there's like a lot of medieval texts that are really interesting to me, but I've had to read them in translation because I can't read Arabic. I can read the script, but I can't, I don't understand the words typically. So that's something I really want to learn. I do have like a year of Hebrew under my belt, and that helps a little bit with some of the vocabulary because they are related languages. So there are some cognates sometimes, and like a lot of the grammar is similar, though not the same. But I really need to work on my Arabic. I really want to as well. But that's another thing I need to, put in effort to working into my schedule that's already very busy, and that's why I haven't really progressed in Arabic. And then the final one is Welsh. Welsh, I've also been looking into a lot of Welsh before my conlang, because my conlang isn't a Celtic language. But Welsh is more of an academic interest for me. I don't know if I plan on going to Wales and speaking Welsh with Welsh speakers. That would be very cool, and I would not say no to the opportunity, but I don't have any plans. With Irish, I would like to go to Ireland. I would even potentially live in Ireland if I could. But with Welsh, it's more of an academic interest. I really am interested in a lot of Welsh literature for a lot of reasons, and I would like to be able to read it in Welsh and not in translation. I'm just someone who prefers to read things in the original language. If you hadn't guessed from my year of doing Yesterlore, I like to read things in the original language to see what we can get out of doing that instead of just reading in translation. Someone in the chat said hi. Hi, chat. I'm just answering question number 2 that I'm on. I'm answering questions about languages I'm interested in. So Welsh, and also Welsh is a very beautiful language. Modern Welsh is very beautiful. I've been studying Modern Welsh a little bit. I'm in like a server for it that I have muted because I'm not actively learning it right now. I was doing it on Duolingo for a while. I know people have thoughts on the Welsh course on Duolingo. But that's the last one that I'm like been actively interested in, but not actively doing because I've been too busy to actually focus on learning languages recently. That's number 2. Question number 3 is, how many languages do you know / speak? And I am not going to answer this question by answering the question. I'm going to answer this question by explaining why you shouldn't ask this question, of a linguist at least, and what you should ask instead to get the information that you think you're asking, but not actually asking for. So if you meet someone who's like a serial polyglot, like the thing they do in life is they go and they love to learn languages, then they might like this question. Like they have put a lot of time into specifically going out and saying like, okay, I'm going to learn German, I'm going to learn Korean, I'm going to learn, they have like a list of languages they want to learn or just pick up languages as they go, and they're really passionate about language learning. Then this is a question that they might like. They might be very happy to say like, oh, I've learned 7 languages, or I've learned 10 languages, or I speak 5 languages, all of which are very impressive skills to have. This is not a takedown of those people. I'm very envious of those people who just can do all that time, spend all the time learning languages, and get to do that. It's fun and it's really cool, and I'm very proud of those people. But the reason you don't want to ask this of a linguist is because you're doing a couple things by asking the question. Not just not knowing what a linguist is. A linguist isn't someone who serially learns languages. They're someone who studies language. Like in a meta sense, they study how language works. That often means that they do speak more than one language. It's usually a requirement that they do. In most, if someone has a degree in linguistics, they're pretty much always requiring you to study usually more than one language that you're not native to. Many universities actually have extra requirements, like at least one of the languages has to be non-Indo-European or something like that. Mine did not, but I did anyway. Try to learn a non-Indo-European language. I studied Hebrew. That was the only one that I knew I would be capable of studying and I had an interest in learning at the time. I don't think they offered Japanese, and I heard bad things about the Mandarin professor and also didn't really have a huge interest in learning Mandarin. So my other option was Hebrew because I had already taken most of the Indo-European ones. So most linguists do know more than just their native language. That's kind of a thing, but there's a difference between being a linguist and a serial polyglot, like a person who goes out and learns languages, or is just learning multiple languages, speaking multiple languages is their thing. So you're already doing that when you ask a linguist that question of sort of like equating those two different things. But the other thing is you're actually putting them in like a deep philosophical quandary because someone who's a linguist is going to be intimately aware of a lot of different things that people who aren't linguists take for granted when it comes to like how we talk about language. People tend to talk about language in a pretty problematic way, just in general. It doesn't really matter where they're from, because language is inherently tied to culture and politics. And so those different issues sort of interact and collide with language in a very intimate way. So you're not just asking them to list, like when you ask them to list what languages are you proficient in, even that is philosophically and politically fraught to ask someone. On the one hand, so there's like multiple angles to this, and I'm going to try to make this brief, but first there's the question of like, what does it mean to know? That's like the bigger one, and that's the one that's like maybe a little bit easier to put parameters on, like you know, you can say like to what degree, like what languages do you have X proficiency in? Because there are different proficiency scales that exist throughout the world. They do not all agree, and many countries have more than one that they use. But there are some pretty widely used, like international standard ones that people use. Like there's the ABC, like A1, B1, A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, etc. Those are pretty common. So people might say like, what languages are you B2 in speaking, or something like that. And people can, you know, break down things like speaking, reading, writing as well, because those are different kinds of proficiencies, right? And people will have different experiences with different kinds of proficiencies in different languages. So that's already a complicated thing to ask someone on the spot, especially if you've just met the person and they've said they're a linguist and you're like, oh, how many languages do you know? Okay, so there's already that calculus that they have to be doing. But there's the additional problem of type of language. Some languages can't be spoken, or written, or like read, just because of the nature of what language they are. And those shouldn't be disqualified from the question, because usually when someone is asking the question, what they really want to know is, like, to what extent have you studied languages? They want to be, often, in my experience, like, people want to be impressed by how many languages you know, in quotes. So they'll ask the question to try to get that out of you, like, wow, it's a lot of languages. How many? Or like, how long have you been studying this topic or this language, or etc. Like, those are actually the questions that are closer to what you should ask, because they're going to get the information you want without as much of the sort of philosophical existential crisis that you're going to trigger for this linguist, because there are different kinds of languages, right? If, like, for example, with me, or with anyone like me who studies predominantly ancient and medieval languages that are no longer spoken, well, I can't answer how well I speak it, because I can, in theory, say, I think I could have a conversation with this person in ancient Egypt, but I can't confirm that. In some cases, we don't even know what vowels a word had. So that's already, like, a very difficult thing to answer. Do I disqualify the many languages that people who study languages that are from the past speak/read from the list of languages that the person asking the question wants to know? Because those count as languages, but they don't really fit the same parameters that people are assuming when they ask the question. So there's already that issue. There's the sort of, what does proficiency mean? How proficient do I have to be in the language to answer this question? Honestly, if I'm going to count, and what kinds of proficiencies count, and what languages do I disqualify if we're not able to measure that level of proficiency in the language because of, you know, either it's not a spoken language, or it's you know, no longer in use, active use. What do we count? So there's already that question. The other question is a little bit more political, because you're being asked to count languages. And the division between language and dialect is a political one. If someone speaks let's say they speak French and they speak Provençal. Those are two different languages from like most linguistics perspectives. Like those, they have different grammar, different vocabulary, different pronunciation, all sorts of different features. But Provençal is spoken in France, right? And it's not a widely spoken language in France. It's spoken in a particular region. Do you count it as a separate language? Most linguists would say yes, but some people would say like it's not even a language. I think those people are wrong, but some people will say that. There's also other issues, like there are some languages that are still deemed to be dialects for political reasons by the political entity that they are in, but they're clearly linguistically different. If you're someone who studies many different dialects of a particular place, what do you count as a separate language when you're counting that? It gets very complicated very quickly. Even with English, like if you're proficient in multiple dialects of English, some of which aren't even mutually intelligible to a great extent. I mean, most English dialects are mutually intelligible. That's why we call them dialects. But there are some that are more intelligible from each other than others. If you have to code switch between them, does it count as a separate language? Some would say yes, some would say no. Because there's also code switching between registers as well. And that's a whole other issue, a whole other political and social issue is register, which I'm not going to spend too much time talking about because I want to get through this question. But basically, you've basically just given you've put a lot of different questions into the mind of the linguist you ask this question that they cannot reconcile probably in the short amount of time that they probably have to respond to you. Especially if this is like an icebreaker question you ask them. You're asking them to, potentially solve decades or centuries long political debates in their brain in order to tell you how many languages they speak. It's just not a great question to ask a linguist. That's my response to this question. Some better questions, like I kind of hinted at, were how long have you been studying languages in general? And that gives them the opportunity to talk about multiple potentially. Or which languages do you enjoy studying most? Because then they can pick ones that they're like confident in, splicing out those details in because they have experience studying them. They can talk about those experiences. Those are questions that I would ask a linguist, and those are questions I have been asked. Okay, the next question is, are there any linguistic features by which I mean cool things that a language does in its grammar or morphology or whatever, that you're head over heels for? So like, is there a linguistic feature that I'm like, oh my god, I love when languages do this? I have quite a few, but the one I think I talk about the most and won't shut my mouth up about is something called quirky subject, or the boring name, which is non-nominative subjects, but most languages who deal with this issue call it quirky subject because we're cool and quirky like that. Quirky subjects, I've done presentations on them. I actually have a page about them on my website too. Quirky subjects are subjects in languages that do not take the nominative case. That's why they're also called non-nominative languages. The nominative case is a case. A case just means the form a word takes to show what role it has in the sentence. A lot of languages do that. English pronouns do that. That's why we have a difference between like she and her. She is the nominative. Her is the accusative. So languages have different forms for different functions in the sentence. Quirky subject is when you use a case other than the nominative to indicate the subject syntactically. So they are the subject in terms of their role in the sentence. Like when you add another clause, you can tell that you're talking about the same person and they are the subject of the verb. But for some reason, the subject isn't in the sort of designated subject case. And usually it's because the verb has to do with sort of some kind of emotional or otherwise non-volitional response. Like the verb, they are the subject of the verb, but it's sort of like not really their fault, or it wasn't something that they did with all of their heart in it or intention. An example is, so quirky subject is mostly a phenomenon observed in some of the older Germanic languages like Icelandic and Old English. I think modern Icelandic has them as well. Yeah, modern Icelandic has them as well, but not, yeah. But Old English also had them. Older dialects of German, like older High German, had it. I think modern German, it looks, and it ends up looking a lot more like sort of Romance impersonal verbs instead. But yeah, so Old English had quirky subjects. In Middle English, they kind of developed into this thing where you could use the quirky subject version and you could use the not quirky subject version of some verbs. And what that did is it kind of made the quirky subject ones end up looking more like impersonal verbs like they do in Romance languages. Impersonal verbs are verbs where it's sort of like if you compare it to English, for example, in English we would just have like a subject, a verb, and an object. But impersonal verbs are sort of where the verb happens to who would typically be the subject, but they're not the grammatical subject anymore. They're actually an indirect object usually. So for example, in I'm thinking of an example, like in Italian, if you say you like something, in standard Italian you'd say mi piace thing. Mi piace. I'm not good at thinking of examples off the top of my head. But if you like something, you don't say that you like it, you say that it pleases you. And that's how it works in Spanish and a lot of other Romance languages as well. But in that sentence, you are not the subject, you are the indirect object. So you're saying like, to me, this thing is pleasing, and you just happen to put the thing that pleases you after the verb, but it's still grammatically the subject. The verb agrees with it. So that's what an impersonal verb is called. And Middle English had a lot of those. But those Middle English impersonal verbs usually developed from older quirky subjects, where they were in a sort of, it wasn't in the nominative case. You'd say, to me, verb, but the verb still would like agree with the subject, even though it was in the dative case, and subsequent clauses would agree back, as if that non-nominative subject was a subject, like it was still the thing you're talking about, who does the verb that comes in the next clause. So a survival of this whole impersonal thing that comes from the quirky subject is the phrase methinks in English. So think was one of these verbs that usually took a non-nominative subject if it was sort of happening to them. Because there were thinks is also a weird one because there are two different verbs that became think. Like they were two separate verbs, but they merged into think. There was thinchan and there was thinchan. Thinchan was to think, like to ponder, to consider something, and it was a normal verb. It took a normal subject, like you'd say I think with thinchan. You'd say like ich thinche in Old English. I, think a thing. I have thoughts. But then there was thinchan, and thinchan was for it to appear to someone, to basically it was to seem. And the person who is having the consideration is put in the dative case. So it's like, to me seems. And we say it seems to me in modern English when we use the verb seem. We don't usually say like, I seem, and then what we think. We say it seems to me. And to say it seems to me in Middle English, you'd say like, methinks. And that's where like, it thinks to me is like what that is. It seems to me. But at that stage, thinchan and thinchan were merging into just like verb thinken. And so it was one of those sort of pair verbs where it could go either way. Like was another verb that had quirky subjects, like likian was, I think, the verb, if I'm remembering correctly in Old English, likian. So like melikath blank. And with likian, it was a lot more like one of those Romance ones where it agrees not with the subject, but with the thing that you like. It basically was like the whole like mi piace phrase, like it pleases me, it likes me. So you'd say like me likes if that had survived into modern English, and I do say me likes sometimes to this day. And I just kind of hope that my friends know what I'm talking about. Um, but that was another one where it actually agreed with the thing that you liked and not with you, if you're the one saying that you like it. But me is still the subject, because then in a subsequent sentence you could say like me likes and want it, right? Like instead of saying like I like and want it, you say like me likes and want it. So like me is clearly standing in for I there grammatically. Anyway, that's quirky subjects. I really like quirky subjects. I could talk about a lot of other features right now, but I'm going to move on to the next question, which is linguistic features that are trademarks / you often add to conlangs. Sort of like calling card kind of things, like, oh, this is definitely Grimm's Lawyer's conlang because it has this. Yes, there are quite a few. I've talked about some of them in my Conlang With Me series about a year ago, but I'll mention some of them now. I tend to not have my languages be nominative accusative. They don't work like English, where there's like a subject case and an object case. Sometimes I do active stative languages. Sometimes I do tripartites. I don't do a lot of tripartite though. Usually I do like role marking or something. Lately I've just been doing this specific kind of role marking alignment that I've fallen in love with, like my journaling uses. So that's one feature. It's usually not going to be nominative accusative, and if it is, it's probably going to have quirky subjects in there, just because I can't commit to full nominative accusative alignment usually. Another one is if I have voiced stops, which I almost always do, like b, d, g, they're going to be allophonic with voiced fricative. So that's like a v, the, g. I don't like distinguishing those. I like those being like interchangeable, or like have a condition where one becomes the other. And that's just the thing I really enjoy. I like pronouncing things that way. That allophony exists in Gothic, and it's one of the things I like the most about the Gothic phonology is, how it sounds. I like that sound to it. Proto-Germanic had that allophony. Spanish, to a degree, has that allophony in most dialects of Spanish. Yeah, it's just very nice. So yeah, that's another sort of thing that I usually have in my conlangs. Another one. Okay, next question, number 6. Do you have a favorite thing you've covered in Yesterlore? This is a really difficult one for me to answer, but I think of all the things I covered in Yesterlore, the thing that I found the most fun, not the thing I've read in Yesterlore that I enjoy the most, but the thing that I had the most fun doing, I think, was the riddles that we did a year ago, that we started a year ago. I started Yesterlore doing riddles, Old English riddles, and I think that was the most fun, just because of all the things that I read, it sort of prompted the most audience engagement. And I really struggled since then to find things that engaged the audience more, because it kind of just became things I wanted to read, which was my original idea for Yesterlore anyway. Before I even started streaming, was I wanted to just stream me reading old things because it was a fun idea. But I had so much fun doing the riddles that it was impossible to capture that magic again. It was really hard to do other things that were as interactive, and I really wanted that. So yeah. I think the riddles were my favorite thing that we did in Yesterlore, just because it was, most interactive. People could guess, what does this riddle mean? What's the answer? That was a lot of fun. Number 7, methods for studying a new language, or thoughts on commonly recommended methods of studying a new language. So do I have any tips kind of thing? When you're studying a new language, the first thing I recommend to do, and this is a common recommendation, I don't see it everywhere. Usually people's recommendations are more like nuts and bolts, like what should you do while you're studying the language. And I don't have as much of recommendation in that department, just because everyone learns so differently. There are different things that work for different people. Not in a learning styles kind of way, but just in like what is going to capture your interest and like make you stick to it and do it and be sustainable for you to continue the language is going to vary so much by the person, their time, their resources. So I can't give like one size fits all, like this is the best way for you to study verbs or something like that. But what I can say is the first thing in approaching learning a language, I think to do is identify why you're doing it very strongly and very clearly. Identify what it is that you want from the experience of learning and what it is that you want to do with the language, like once you are learning it and starting to use it. Like, what are you going to use it for? And this isn't me saying you have to only study languages that are useful. Lord knows I've studied some unuseful from an economic standpoint languages. Like what uses ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs to me if I'm not going into Egyptology? None, practically, but also not none. I gained so much from studying ancient Egyptian. Even if it's not economic gain, it's a lot of other gains. So that's sort of like the first question is like, why? Why are you learning the language? What do you want to get out of it? What experiences do you want to have? Who do you want to use language with if it's a language that's currently spoken? Like, where can you go to find people to speak with? Like, how are you going to use it? Are you going to go to a place where it's widely spoken or join some like communities online where you can speak to people who speak it natively? Consume media in it? Is there like specific things you want to watch or read or listen to and understand in the language? So I would make as thorough and large of a list as you can of like things you want to be able to do with the language, because that is going to be extremely motivating to have, especially if you can like put it somewhere that's very visible, like have it like print it out or something, or write it in a journal on like the front page and have a bookmark in it or something where you can put it up on your, next to your desk or wherever you're going to be studying, to just kind of remind yourself, like, why am I doing this? Because language learning, even for people who really enjoy language learning and like are passionate about language, it still takes so much time and work and effort to actually learn to use a language. There's no painless way. People will try to sell you on like painless ways of learning languages, but you always have to make mistakes and get them corrected. You always have to practice and be wrong multiple times. You always have to go through periods where you're like, this does not make sense to me because I'm not used to thinking in this new way that the language is asking me to think, or pay attention to these features that my language just kind of glosses over, expresses in a different way. There's always going to be those challenges. So remembering why you're going through that process, especially when it gets really difficult, is important. And if your answer is simply, like, if the answer that you have for why you're learning languages, it's required for whatever you're doing, like if you're in high school or college and you have a language requirement, if that's all you have in terms of like the true, at the end of the day, reason you're learning the language, that's understandable. But if you're going to actually pass the class and get something out of it other than just a mark off of your, transcript or whatever, you have to find more. You have to try to look for things that you can enjoy in the language. Look for things. And what I usually recommend is look for things that you're already interested in, but in your target language. Like if you're already interested in, music theory, like there are people who make music theory probably videos or, content in your target language. If you're interested, in if you really like playing a video game, you could try and see if there's someone who does Let's Plays who speaks that language that you're learning. There are people all over the world who like video games, and there's a chance that you'll find someone who plays the game that you like, who speaks their target language, and you won't be able to understand what they're saying about their play if you don't learn the language. You can create reasons to, enjoy learning the language that you have to study if it's a requirement. But if it's just something you've chosen to do, it's a lot easier, I find, to like come up with reasons that you want to learn it and why. And having those in the forefront, like being aware of them. Not focusing on them as like specific goals, like, oh, if I can't do this, I've failed. If I'm not able to watch this TV show and understand it in French, I've failed at French and now I'm going to be sad. That's not the point of the list. The list isn't to like be goals. They're things to make you excited about learning the language. You know, like, oh, it would be so cool if I could use, this language to talk to these people, these like online friends I've made, or, there's lots of things you can try to find to remind yourself of your goals. Not to be additional goals to reach, because those can actually be demotivating sometimes to have, but just to be things to remind you of like, why am I doing this? I found that helpful for my own language learning, especially when I was learning languages that weren't like my top choice, or I didn't have like an extreme passion about them. I succeeded more when I was able to find things I wanted to do with those languages. That's my main advice for starting a new language. Any favorite conlangs of the ones you've made you'd be comfortable talking about? For this one, I'm just going to say stay tuned. I've done a conlang showcase before of like one of my languages that I've made. I can't remember if I actually put it on my YouTube channel or not. I think I did. But there are definitely more conlangs I want to talk about that I've made or am working on, and I plan on doing that. I plan on doing some more streams where I talk about those. So for that one, I'm just not going to answer that one yet and just say stay tuned, because I'm going to decide and show some more. Okay, so the next question is, do you have... Wait, no. I already read that one. Any dream translation project? Ooh, that one is tricky. Dream translation project is tricky because... there are a lot of things I want to translate. Translation isn't like my main... that's not my main thing. I like more like analyzing things, writing analyses of like certain language things, linguistic topics. But there are some things that I've wanted to like do an edition of. There actually is a thing I'm working on doing an edition of, and I might do some streaming of like the, programming side of that part, like the page design. When I actually end up putting that on my website, there's something I've been working on for a while and wanted to do for years. But I'm actually doing that one, so it's less of a dream and more of a reality the closer we get to it. But a dream one that I've always wanted to do is I've wanted to publish an edition of The Wanderer with illustrations, but I have images of my mind of what the illustrations look like, and I don't know how to explain it to an illustrator if I were to like partner with someone or hire someone to be the illustrator for this. They're very specific images in my head of like what they look like. It's like a very sort of specific style I have in my brain. And I think I just need to be the one to illustrate it, even though like I'm not the biggest visual artist. I do like to do some painting from time to time, but I think I would like to one day, if I had the time, the large amount of time it would take for me to actually sit down and finally do these like drawings and this edition of The Wanderer, I would do it. The Wanderer is maybe my favorite poem in Old English, in English in general, of any period. And I have always wanted to do an edition. And the edition would be in Old English and Modern English. It would be sort of like a dual language version. So the idea is I would like basically divide the poem. It's not divided into stanzas, but I would basically kind of artificially break up little pieces of it to do, and there would be sort of facing pages. So like there would be an illustration that spans maybe 2 pages, or maybe there's 2 next to each other that go together, and on one side you see the Old English and the other you'd see the Modern English of like, a bit that goes together, maybe like a sentence. Trick is a lot of like the sentence breaks in Old English poetry happen midway through the line. So it's like mega, ultra mega enjambment going on with a lot of Old English poetry. So that might make it tricky, but I would that's what the project would entail, would be me dividing it up, me doing the art, me putting it into a book. But I do really want to do that someday. Maybe I will get the chance. All right. Thoughts on the television show Supernatural? No. Any dream conlang project? Okay, this is very different. So, a dream conlang project. I think my dream conlang project would be if I got hired, like DJP style, David J. Peterson. He's the guy who made Dothraki. If I could get hired for like a really cool movie franchise or something, or like TV show, I would think I'd prefer a TV show over a movie because I would, have a longer period of employment with it. But just getting to make the conlang and be the one who's like the consultant for it, and like, helping the actors learn to pronounce it, maybe even speak it and know what they're saying, would be really cool. I'm very interested in like, media, like film and TV production in like a hobbyist kind of way. It's interesting to me. I'm not skilled in it in any way, shape, or form. I'm not a screenwriter or anything like that, but I do find it fun, and so it'd be cool to be a part of that process in a linguistic capacity. So that's like a dream, like getting hired to be the person who makes the conlang for a show would be really cool. I would prefer fantasy, but if it's sci-fi, I won't say no. Like if it's just exo languages. Xenolinguistics is tricky. Making alien languages, I'm pretty much never satisfied with alien languages when I see them in a show or a movie. We'll get to that because I have a question about that. But I don't think I have the skill or the creativity level even to be able to do an alien language. So if it is a conlang for a sci-fi, I would prefer it if it's like the humans speak the language, because I'm a lot more comfortable making human conlangs than I am making alien conlangs. There's some people who really make really cool alien conlangs. I've seen some really cool ones, but mostly I am dissatisfied with most sort of mainstream alien languages. We'll get there. Okay, the next question is, how do you get started making conlangs? That's complicated. Wait, is it how did I get started, or how do you get started? Like, how does one get started? Oh, it's how did I get started? I got started with making conlangs when I was very young, like around that same time when I was like getting into Greek and Latin, when I was like 7 or 8 maybe. When I was first exposed to Tolkien stuff, I got interested in making conlangs. So that's tricky. I think it was just I got interested in making conlangs because I was exposed to them, like especially in Tolkien's world. He had lots of languages spoken that were not real world languages. They were his conlangs, and I was learning languages and interested in those. So I got started really early on, and this kind of dovetails with the next question, which is, do you remember your first conlang ever? I don't, because I was so young and I had so many and I made so many and then started and then abandoned them. I don't remember what my first one was like or what it was. My guess is it probably had a lot of just borrowing from like Latin or Greek or Italian or some kind of hybridization of them, because those were the languages I was actively studying at the time. But I remember some of my early ones. I don't remember how old I was when I made these, but one of my earliest ones was meant to be spoken on an archipelago of islands where the center one was volcanic, and it was kind of like the central island was actually kind of like a Z shape, and then there were other islands that came around it, like spirally around it. And there were different islands, and they all spoke the same language, but there were different dialects, and they had like slightly different cultural practices on the different islands. And the writing system was color based. And so when it was just written out, it would be dots with colors, like dots of different colors. But the ornamental way of writing was actually just drawing pictures in such a way that the colors could be read along the picture. And that wasn't something I invented. That does exist, but I wasn't aware of it at the time. I thought I came up with that idea, and then later I learned, oh, people have made color alphabets before. But it was fun to make, and I don't remember the language at all. And I remember drawing a map and labeling the islands in the language with dots of the colors, but it's lost to time. Another early one was very much inspired by ancient Egyptian, so I must have been at least 10 at this point. But it was a biconsonantal root system, much like Huraskan that I showed in my Conlang Showcase episode. It's biconsonantal roots, and it was a logographic system, just like Huraskan. But I don't remember much about it other than I had a system for combining many different characters into like a block. So those are some of my first conlangs ever. Next question, any thoughts on Rings of Power? Yes, too many to talk about in this stream. If I ever do a stream on Rings of Power, it's going to be several hours long because I have so much to say. As a lifelong Tolkien fan and person passionate about his works and languages and avid reader of all the stuff that people hate reading of his, I have very, very many, very, very, very many thoughts on Rings of Power and all the discourse around it. That will be a several-hour video if I ever make it. I likely won't, but we'll see. If I ever do like an extra long, like, hang out with me for several hours while I game stream, maybe I'll talk about it, but not today. Okay. So 15 beloved or beloathed conlangs from fiction or / pet peeves that you see in a lot of conlangs. Okay, in fiction. So beloved and beloathed conlangs. Ooh, this is fun. Okay, so this is where I get to talk about pet peeves. I'm gonna say my beloved ones, the ones I find the most interesting. So, sorry, in my head I'm like doing math here too, and it's hard for me to do math while talking. What I need is, so it's 36 up and down squares, and I'm gonna divide these into 6 because Saturday, Sunday I can usually just kind of merge because I don't have as much on those. But I have 32 squares available because I've taken 4 out, if I've done that math correctly. So I need to divide 32 into 3. So I'm just gonna I'll just divide it into 10, and maybe just do like an extra space between two of them. So like I'll do 10 space 10 space 10, and that should equal 32, right? 10 times 30 space 2. Yeah, okay. Thank you for bearing with my math struggles there. Okay, so we've got 1, 7, 8, 9, 10 space. I think I miscounted because there's 11 here. I don't know how that happened. I must have counted wrong up here. I think that one's shorter than the others. These actually don't need to be as long anyway because Monday and Tuesday I'm not actually working, and that's why this week is weird. I'm going to be out of town, and so I don't have work schedules to put there anyway. I can just maybe, I don't even know what I'm going to put there other than like maybe the time of like when I'm leaving and when I come back and stuff, because there are some like times I need to at least keep in mind, if not remember. Also, I realized after having talked about the fact that I had to do my erasing before doing the gold, I didn't do my erasing before putting on the gold, so I have to be careful when I do the border here. Erasing. That's okay. Not the end of the world. Oh, okay. That is that. All right. I'm almost done with all my questions too, so then I can actually start. This is good because I'm about to be starting my actual week, and so it's actually kind of good timing to talk about what I'm doing, because I wanted to talk a little bit more about how I'm doing my layout than I did last time. So, beloved and beloathed conlangs. So, I think it's not going to be a surprise to anyone that like the Elvish languages are some of my favorite conlangs. I guess people could say they're overrated. I think they're really beautiful. They really aesthetically speak to me in a way that I know they don't speak to everyone. But I really love the Elvish languages and how they sound and how they work. I really love them. So like Quenya and Sindarin. For a very long time, Sindarin was my favorite Elvish language. Over time, I've come to appreciate Quenya as well, and now I think they're just like even, but for very different reasons. Quenya. I could talk about this for a long time, but I'm not going to. I don't have all the time to talk about this. Outside of Lord of the Rings, though, and the Silmarillion and the works of Tolkien in general. Oh, yeah. I also love Adunaic, and I wish we got more of it, because Adunaic is another language Tolkien made. It's the language of Numenor, and it's like a human language, and it's also very beautiful, and I really do wish we had more Adunaic than we do. So that's another one of Tolkien's non-Tolkien languages that I really admire. For fictional worlds, specifically for fictional depictions, because there are a lot of conlangs I really like that weren't made for fictional worlds, but that would be an all-day conversation of like conlangs I like and dislike in general. I'm gonna try to stick to ones that have been in media that I've consumed. So like the ones in George R.R. Martin's universe, like the Game of Thrones languages, are very well constructed. David J. Peterson knows what he's doing when he makes conlangs. He's a very skilled linguist, and I do like how they work. I've studied a little Dothraki and High Valyrian. I haven't learned them to any kind of capacity, but I've like looked into how they work and how they sound and stuff, and I like them. He definitely has an aesthetic that I've noticed with his like completely fantasy languages that's very recognizable, because the Elvish language that he made for Bright and that universe, phonesthetically is really similar to High Valyrian to me. Like, he just has, like, I guess, he has some calling cards in terms of his phonology that he likes to use. And that's not a bad thing. He has a recognizable style. I haven't watched The 100 or any of the other stuff where he's made conlangs for, so I can't really speak to those. But in terms of like the Game of Thrones ones, I don't beloved them or beloathe them. They're really cool. They're not for me personally. Like, I'm not super interested in them, mostly just because I'm not super interested in George R. R. Martin's universe very much. I could talk about that for a little bit, but it would not be super interesting. I don't have that much interesting to say that hasn't been said by other people. It's just not. It doesn't capture me very much. But the conlangs are really cool. I will say they're cool. Not my favorite. It's actually kind of hard for me to think of media conlangs that I've been exposed to. One that is like unlearnable, but that I still really like, and it's the only good depiction of an alien language I think I've ever seen, except maybe Close Encounters of the Third Kind, or whatever that movie was called, where they used lights and music. That was okay. But it's like the only good alien language depiction that I've actually admired, and it was Arrivals, the sort of like circular, like goopy, misty language that the aliens communicated in was really cool, and seems to me like way more like how an alien communication system would work than anything else I've seen. Like, for example, I'm not going to say this is a beloathed conlang, but not V. In the Avatar universe, a lot of thought was put into it. The linguist whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, who made it, gosh, I literally just looked at his name earlier this week because he came up in a conversation. I can't remember his name. I'm going to look this up because it's going to bother me. Anyway, not V is not a poorly constructed conlang from conlang perspective. Like, it's, oh wow, learn not V came up. I'm not going to learn not V. It's a beautiful language. I love how it sounds. I love how it works. Its grammar makes a lot of sense to me. Paul Frommer is the linguist who made it. Not V is really cool. It's very much a human language. Very, very human, and not even that alien. The features that Paul Frommer chose were features of, like, he kind of combined influences from, like, a lot of groups of indigenous Native American languages and also Polynesian language features. So they're very human language features and very common human language features. But he chose them because to the widely English-speaking audience, they would sound foreign. And for that reason, that being the reason he chose those features makes me not like the language very much, because it's not alien. It's alien to the perceived audience of Anglo-Americans and maybe other European language-speaking Americans, and other people who speak European languages. But if you're from a culture that speaks a Polynesian language or a Native American language, it's not alien at all. And when you couple that with sort of like the framing of them as indigenous in the story, it just kind of grosses me out a little bit that the language is so recognizably like a conglomeration of features of indigenous and Polynesian languages. Like, I don't know. I don't love it. It's a beautiful language, and yeah, it's very well constructed. It's speakable. Like, you could go and learn it and speak it fluently, possibly. There are words for things that we don't have words for here, and there are words that we have in human languages that they don't have words for because they're not concepts on Pandora, but or like in their cultures plural because there's more than one Na'vi culture, but there's I don't know. It's just kind of disappointing. I'm always disappointed when alien languages, in order to code them as alien, they just use non-European features. This is a criticism I also have of Klingon. Klingon is an interesting language. It's really cool. I don't have any hate for Trekkies. I know some Trekkies who actually speak Klingon. But, again, it's not alien. It's human. And with Klingon, it's kind of worse because they like position it as like very rough sounding and like harsh when they use very beautiful phonemes from languages, very beautiful sounds, but it's like we're supposed to be like weirded out or scared of it because it sounds foreign, and it's just not a good look, I think. And that's why I'm usually disappointed with exo languages. Like, do something that's not about human speech sounds, maybe. Or there's like a cat conlang I've seen people talk about where it's like they're like cat humanoid creatures, and they actually took the anatomy of cats' mouths into account. Like, if you had a cat's mouth but also human enough to speak, like, how would the anatomy of their mouth affect how they speak? That to me shows at least some thought that goes into that. There was thought with not V in terms of like the not V's mouths, because I think they're not entirely the same as human mouths, but like they're not entirely different either. They use the most generic set of human speech vowels as you could imagine in their language. So yeah, I guess those aren't beloathed. They're just like disappointment. Do I have any beloathed conlangs? The old tongue or whatever it's called in the inheritance cycle, the Aragon books, those annoy me. Beloathed. I don't think I have any beloathed conlangs in media because I just don't consume enough media that has conlangs in it. I have beloathed conlangs, but not. I guess not in film. I haven't watched enough movies or seen enough shows that use conlangs. They've put effort into like thinking about, I guess. So that's that question. Beloved and beloathed. Okay. I guess I talked about pet peeves, at least with the alien thing. Last one. This is actually the last question I have, but I'm open to more questions because I'm here for a good like 13 more minutes. No, yeah, 13 more minutes. Where do you get journal setup / design inspiration? So the main places I get journal setup and design inspiration, the main place is YouTube, actually. I just search for the specific thing I want inspiration for, and I just watch random videos. I don't really follow many bullet journalers. There's a couple I follow, but they don't actually do bullet journaling very much. They more do like traveler's journal, like put stickers and stuff into their books. Don't really journal in them, or like they don't show the journaling part of it, at least. So I don't have any like recommendations for people to follow necessarily, because I just kind of randomly find inspiration from different people. And part of the reason for that is when it comes to like bullet journaling, for me at least, it's very much a thing where every person who does bullet journaling is going to do something different and want different things out of it and get different things out of it. And often, like the people who've been doing it for the longest, they've really wrapped the way that they do their bullet journal into their own lifestyle, and it fits them. And that's kind of the goal, is to like get it to fit your lifestyle, so it's not like an extra thing you have to do or think about, but it's just sort of like a normal part of your life, and fits in well with the other parts of your life. But everyone's life is different, right? Like everyone's lifestyle, like the lifestyle of a person you follow on YouTube is not necessarily going to be yours or fit yours. So how they do their bullet journal is not going to fit yours. So I'm not saying don't follow them. You can follow whoever you want. But just be aware that you can, and you both can and are encouraged to not do exactly what they do, and just, tweak it to what makes sense for you. For a long time, I did habit trackers. I used to do habit trackers a lot. I don't do habit trackers anymore because I found that did not work out for me. But I was doing it because like almost everyone I saw doing bullet journals did it. Not just one person, but different people with different lifestyles were doing it. And so I was like, I guess it's a requirement, ? But it did not work, and so I just stopped doing it, and I'm much happier. So, but some people really find that habit trackers are helpful for them. Everyone's going to be very different in terms of how they do their journal. So, yeah, I mostly get my inspiration from YouTube. But there are some other places, I guess. I just look at another place, as you can probably guess, is like medieval manuscripts, where they do interlace borders, because I like doing interlace borders because of that. That's another place. Like when I see a cool design in like a manuscript, like a medieval manuscript, I'm like, oh, that's going in my journal for sure next week. So that's another place I find inspiration, or just cool designs, motifs in nature. Like if I see like a cool plant shape, that's going to be a border between days. Just I like finding it from different places. But the main place, if I had to like pick a place where I get most of my inspiration, it's just other people who do bullet journals on YouTube. Oh, it's not even. I did my math wrong somewhere. Okay. I'm going to do something else up here. Okay. So, I think what happened is I just didn't pick the actual center. That's okay. Okay, so what I just did, I'm going to explain what I did, is I cut off another square from the edge of this because I decided, so in previous weeks, I've actually had to like do the little border between my weekly and my weekly sidebar and my daily on 4 things because of the nature of, how it works. Let me go back to this one. I had to do this like 1, 2, 3, 4 times because I wanted the space to be there, or I wanted like a border to be there no matter where I flipped to. But the easier way to do that is just to make 2 borders and cut it in so that the borders are there. I just wanted more paper, and so that's why I didn't do it. But, you know, since I don't work this whole week, I only work 3 days this week, I can deal with like 1 less space. It's not like I've used all the space in the prior pages anyway. So that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So this sort of like space between the weekly and the daily is just going to be interlaced because I didn't do interlace on the side this time. So there's still got to be interlace just because it's me. All right. So that bullet journal question was actually the last question I had in my Q&A list. But I did want to talk about future streams because yesterday was the last day of Yesterlore for some time. I don't know how long, but I'm going to need to not be doing Friday night streams for the foreseeable future. And so Yesterlore's on hiatus. I'm also sort of like rethinking what things I want to do if I do return to Yesterlore, which I hope to do. Yesterlore Season 2. I guess is what we could call it. Although I was kind of already calling it Season 2. But in the meantime, I'm still doing Saturday streams. This week was just 12 to 1:30 instead of 12 to 2 because I have to leave a little bit earlier today to go do some stuff. But they're mostly going to be 12 to 2 moving forward, as they have been for the most part. And next week is going to be, I'm actually not sure. I have a couple different things that it could be next week. Part of me, so I forgot to mute my computer. Okay. So, for one thing, I have more of the sort of Silmarillion poetry adaptation thing I was doing to work on. That's one option. Another thing I'm working on is I'm thinking about doing a conlang showcase maybe. I want to explain how I do PIE langs, P-I-E langs, langs derived from Proto-Indo-European, which is a really popular style of conlang, and it's a very fun style of conlang, but I don't think I've ever showed any of mine, and I've done a lot. And the way I actually I used to format them very differently than how I'm formatting them now. How I format them now is actually heavily inspired by another friend who does conlangs. Shout out to you. You know who you are if you're watching this. She's great. She does lots of PIE langs. But I picked up her method of sort of like organizing them recently. I used to organize things in like vertical tables, but I've been doing like a horizontal thing with sound change recently, and I really like it. So, yeah, I might show one of those conlangs, and because I want to also work on it more. There's stuff I want to do with that conlang at some point. At one point, it was going to potentially be a journal lang, but it didn't end up being a journal lang for reasons. I think I briefly showed the page for it in my last project stream about journal langing. So that's a potential topic for project stream. And the other thing I was potentially going to do is stream some of another project I've been working on, which is an edition of the rune poems. So if you watched Yesterlore last year, I did a lot of rune poem streams where I read the different rune poems. But what I've been wanting is a sort of like clickable online edition available, and that doesn't exist. Certainly not one that puts them all like kind of with each other together. And it would be fun to do a normalized version of them as well, like sort of like edited to be in sort of reconstructed standard version that didn't exactly exist at the time. A little bit anachronistic, but like easier to follow as a reader potentially. And then you can click on individual words and see the breakdown of what they mean individually and like what grammatical features they have, like how the sentence fits together, that kind of thing. And then also maybe collate several translations as well, along with my own translation. That's an idea I have, but I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to present that. I've been working on this for a while. Like, I have several different versions of translations of each stanza and the different rune poems, and working out how I want to present it is a challenge. And also, since I'm still sort of in the process of learning HTML and stuff, it would be a fun challenge to figure out how to present that on a website. But that's another project, but that's a longer term thing. So I don't know if I'm going to work on that this coming weekend or not. So it's just kind of up in the air right now what next week is going to be, whether it's going to be more conlang stuff, that project, more Ainu Lindale poem adaptation, or something original, like just kind of making up a new poem, or doing some kind of art project. I've been thinking about doing that as well. There's also some stuff I want to read non-Yesterlore wise, that might be fun to just read on stream as well. Or if I can get my computer to cooperate, I might even try streaming some game play while talking or answering questions, maybe even getting to that Rings of Power question I talked about. So I'm not sure what's going to happen this coming weekend, but it will most likely be either conlang or Silmarillion stuff. One of the two is most likely. So that's what you should maybe expect for this coming week. Conlangs or Silmarillion. Otherwise, I'll try to post an announcement on YouTube of what... Actually, in any case, I think I'm going to try to post a YouTube community post with what I'm going to do. Like, I'll probably know by like Thursday what I'm going to plan on doing for Saturday. So yeah, that is all for today. Thank you for everyone who made it to the stream. If you're watching this on YouTube in the future, I will be still interested in getting more questions in the comments, or I don't know, comments in the comments. So I was trying to avoid saying that, but yeah, comments or questions in the comments. I just realized I didn't actually tell you how I was breaking this up. So usually what I do, okay, hold up, pause the goodbye. Usually I divide the days into halves. This one I did vertically. I kind of want to do vertical this coming week is what I was going to say. So usually I divide them into halves, and then, you know, because there's 7 days in the week and not 8, I have like a square half that's not taken. What I'm going to do, I think, this week is I'm going to do vertical. So I'm just going to do like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, extra space. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that a little bit differently. I think I'm going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Wait, no. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's because Monday and Tuesday are the days when I am going to be out of town and I'm like going on a little trip. And I think these days I'm going to put titles at the top, but I think these are mostly going to be made up of like either I'm going to take little pictures and print them out with my little sticker printer, or I might have like, I don't know, little brochures or like little pieces of ticket or something that I want to put in here. So what I'm thinking is like Monday, Tuesday will just be like scrapbooking my trip that I'm going to go on Monday and Tuesday. And then this will be like when I get back to work. So it'll be like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Because Saturday, Sunday is usually pretty blank, as you can see from prior weeks. Like this is Saturday, Sunday this week. And this is Saturday, Sunday this week. So, and then the week prior, this is Saturday, Sunday. They're pretty much the most barren days because I have less to do. Sometimes I'll draw things here. I do plan on, with this blank space, coming back and like taking notes on different things. That's what I typically do with my Saturday, Sunday, is I then put my index like, oh, I took notes on this thing on this page, and then I can find it later. But I can probably just fit Saturday, Sunday onto one half. So I'm going to just divide this in half. I don't remember the math here. So like it's 20 across. Let me just double check that it's 20 across. It is, where's my spacing page. There we go. It is indeed 20 across. So 20 minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is 14. So it's 7 across for these different days. So it's going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I didn't count this innermost part, I think, as part of the 20 because it's hard to write on because it's sloped. And so I'm not really going to write there anyway. I might put like washi tape or something through the middle or something like that. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, and then I'm going to cut it in half midway down for this one. It's going to go... I was wrong about where the center was this time, but it's not imperative that Sunday and Saturday split evenly. I usually have more to put on Sunday because I usually have like a long to-do list of like cleaning because Sunday's like my cleaning the apartment day usually. So I usually have more on Sunday, so I'll make Sunday a little bit bigger. Saturday's mostly like I stream and then I do sort of miscellaneous things, but it's mostly like my actual relaxing day is Saturday. And then Sunday's more like getting ready for the coming week. How that usually goes. I do a lot of house cleaning and stuff. So, and then Wednesday, Thursday is going to be split like this. And I'll do the design for like how I want to do the day and the date on my own. I think you can imagine how one can do it. You've seen how I've done it in the past. I usually do like a little interlace thing around the name of the day. This is in my conlang that I've been working on. I have days of the week in the conlang. I talked about that in my last week's stream that didn't get recorded. But yeah, and then I put like the little actual day. And I also talked about my little like faux Roman numeral system. I might talk about that next time. I think what I'll do, no matter what my stream is next week, I'll try to show you what I ended up doing. Like I'll kind of do a little show and tell as I'm doing my stream so you can see how the day writing actually came out. Because at that point I'll be on Saturday. So you'll get to see how it came out. All right, so that's the actual end of the stream now. Thank you so much, everyone. Please leave comments, questions in the comments on YouTube. That's such an awkward thing to say. And I'm excited to interact with those either there or in the next video that I record. So, sorry, let me slip this back in the holder thing. And, whoop, this does not go in the middle. It goes... I'm trying to find the center of the book again. The center of the book was here. There we go. Okay. It's good to put it in the center so that it, like, I don't know, affects the bend the least, the band, when you have one of these holder things. But yeah, I will show how this ends up coming out next time. Thank you and farewell.